Good afternoon. Lovely to see you all with us. And hello, Tim. Nice to have you.
Hello.
So for those of you who just joined us or people that haven't watched us before, the Vulnerability Arena hashtag used to be the V movement. And look at that for vulnerability. I was about to sneeze. Great timing. What's it all about? So basically, the Vulnerability Arena started when I was experiencing different group experiences with different people. And it was almost like surface level interactions, right, Tim, where people were just having conversations, but there wasn't really a connection. People didn't seem to like really have that unified feeling of supporting each other in this experience that I was having. So what I suddenly realized is that we were all hiding stuff, right? There was so many things we were like, oh God, I hope they don't find that out about us, or I hope they don't, I can't let anyone see this side of me, or I hope I haven't, shown this side of my behavior. And so we did vulnerability videos, which just literally shared everything about ourselves. And yes, it was a bit scary. Well, it was very scary, actually. I can confirm. And it almost felt like after that experience that we were having like a deeper connection with each other, and we were really vested in or invested in kind of the well-being of others and really caring about what happens to them in that experience. And I was like, this is a thing definitely needs to be spoken about more in terms of enabling others to lean into this kind of vulnerability piece and see the power of it, right? Because before, the stories for me certainly were, if I show this emotional side of me, that people will think I'm weak, for example. So it was definitely something in me that really switched over. And I'm delighted to have Tim Sismey, I think I've said it right. Yay!
Well done. Yep.
With us today. So tell everyone about yourself, Tim, and welcome to everyone who's watching.
Hello, it's my first ever live thing, so apologies in advance. I'm Tim. My business is called Make Work Work Better. I'm really interested in process and productivity and teamwork, and how the things that we do in work affect the way that we feel about our work, and how the way we feel about our work affects our mental health. So the analogy that I always make is that if it's your job to lift heavy things, day one you get taught to lift heavy things so you don't hurt yourself. But we don't do that for mental health. We don't teach people up front how to manage the things that put stresses on them that eventually lead to injury. And actually what we do is the responses that we have to mental health in the workplace are remedial. So to belabor the analogy, it's kind of the equivalent of, rather than teaching people how to lift things safely, what we do with mental health is we kind of train some of the people in the organization to be part-time chiropractors, so when they inevitably injure themselves, we can help them sort of fix themselves. So my mission is to change the way organizations think about mental health, to make it something that they accept isn't just something we bring to work with us, that organizations have a play to help us not just not get worse, but also to actively protect our mental health in the workplace. And apart from that, and as part and parcel of that, I'm one of a handful of certified trainers in something called Getting Things Done, which is a book that kind of sort of changed my life back in 2006, which is about personal organization. So a book by David Allen called Getting Things Done. Everyone who knows me since 2006 thinks I'm an organized person. I'm not an organized person. I have just found a way to organize myself. And so I teach people how to do that as well.
Wow. What a big mission as well, Tim. Yeah.
Well, you gotta go big or go home, right, Heather?
I love that. Go big or go home. Yeah, I 100% agree. What it tells me is that you're fully invested in making a difference in this area of business, or in this area of need, really, because especially after the pandemic, we both have experienced and discussed, I know, about people's inability to really reach out for help, and actually in the workplace more so, right? Would you agree that maybe the pandemic has actually given people more permission to reach out for help, or would you say it's completely different?
I think it's really difficult to tell at the moment. I think organisations are more aware that they need to think about their people as a result of the situation that happened during the pandemic. I think so. Next month we'll get the HSE figures about mental health and how that's impacted sick days, and I've got a sneaking suspicion it's going to be weirdly, unintuitively down on last year, because I think I've just got this feeling that people working from home, if you wake up and you're feeling terrible and you have to go into an office, you're not going to go through everything you need to do in order to go to the office. If you wake up and you're feeling terrible, and all you've got to do is roll out of bed and switch your laptop on, then you're more likely to do that, especially if you're not comfortable talking to the people in your workplace about mental health. So I have a feeling that actually we're going to get this kind of weird remote presenteeism that's going to start to establish itself as a result of the pandemic. But yeah, we'll know in a few weeks whether I'm right or not.
What's interesting about that, and I'd love to hear people watching as well, your thoughts on this. Do you think really with the pandemic it's been easier for people to hide what's going on with them because they haven't had that normal routine to go to work or get up and kind of do a journey, have a journey of some kind to get into the office?
100%. I think it's been easier for people to hide it. I think it's given, and not just from a physical perspective, being in a place, but also there are so many other things that people could, divert attention towards. There's a pandemic going on, of course I'm a bit stressed, whereas actually, I think it's fair to say that our background, the sort of background anxiety levels were just a lot higher, especially during the sort of first half of last year. If you've ever done a mental health first aid course, they talk a lot about your stress bucket, about everyone's got a stress bucket, and you've got to know what fills up your bucket and you've got to know what empties your bucket in order to look after your bucket. I think between sort of March and June last year, everyone's bucket was just a little bit fuller than it would have been anyway, just because it's end times, right? So I think there was lots of different ways of distracting from or blaming on the way people feel about things. And I'm not sure that I'm not sure we're really a lot further on in the general conversation of mental health, so much as it is a conversation. I don't know how honest that conversation is a lot of the time.
Yeah, it was reminding me about some stuff I've been writing around people choosing to numb, and actually sometimes without realizing it, work would be a form of numbing, so that they don't feel what's really going on with them, or to try and avoid that kind of anxiety level, and to give somebody the ability to really speak to what they need or recognize that. I think the pandemic has either added to it, and it's come to fruition in some way, because for whatever reason the numbing's not working. Right, and by numbing I mean let's have another glass of wine tonight, or 5, or let's binge watch this series on Netflix, because then I don't have to think about what's going on outside, or let me do this whole massive report that I don't really want to do for work, but actually let's do it because then I haven't got to think about what's actually going on with me, and oh, by the way, let's, harshly or not, let's kind of use the pandemic as a reason for me, or permission to give myself permission to do all these things and not really sit with what's going on actually. And like you say, 100%. raise that topic of well-being and mental health. Definitely.
I found it very interesting when we had the third lockdown, or the lockdown at the beginning of this year, because I knew a lot of people who were saying, I'm not going to do what I did last time. I'm not going to be on the wine at 6 o'clock, and I am going to look after myself a little bit more. And and they were very much like, I don't want to repeat the behaviour from that first lockdown. But the same people are also going, oh, it's a bit harder this time, isn't it? And it's like, well, yeah, because you're not doing the things that you did last time to cope with what is a really, really odd situation. And if you're letting yourself feel it, you're going to find it a bit harder.
Yeah, and it's almost like you didn't have, whereas before you'd have the excuse of time, you know, to keep fit and eat the right foods. It kind of wasn't there at that time, wasn't it?
That's right.
You know, it was kind of, it was gone, it was out of the ether, and it's like, well, I can't blame that anymore. So what else can I blame for me not doing these things, right? And I think the reason why it's really important for us to talk about it, I must say, like on the vulnerability arena, we haven't generally talked about maybe even the impact of the pandemic and actually, you know, how people come out the other side and the mental health aspects of that on here before. And I think it's part of your story. Would I be right in saying that's why you do what you do, really, Tim? Or
No, 100%. Yeah. I've experienced the way that working practices, expectations, unclear career paths, management style, conflicting roles, an ability to deal with workloads and pressure and so on and so forth can, you know, I've experienced that personally and how that can impact, how that impacted my mental health. I've also seen it happen with teams that I've led or teams that I've been in. Poor change management is another one, and they're all things that actually within an organization's gift to address and solve. You know, and it just seems interesting to me that, you know, if you have a team who have a lot of work to do in a short period of time, that is stressful. And there's no getting around that. That's going to be stressful. Now, some people in that job will really like it. Other people in that job may not like it. But when someone goes off sick with stress, or if someone is brave enough to come forward and say, I'm feeling, I'm struggling with this, the response from most organizations, and I would go like 95% of organizations, if not higher, is to look at EAPs and counseling and resilience training and mindfulness. And what that's doing is saying to the individual, you can't cope. You're not strong enough. As opposed to saying, maybe we as a business are asking too much. And that doesn't, and what that's doing ultimately is accepting that it's accepting that your environment is harmful. And you can have as much resilience as you like, but there's a guy, Peter Kelly, who's the chief psychologist for the Health and Safety Executive, and he talks about how he put together, like, he had a fish pond. He was starting a fish pond in his garden, and the person in the fish shop was like, you want to get these fish because these fish are really resilient, you know, so you get these fish to start with, populate your pond with resilient fish. But they weren't looking quite right, and so he thought, well, these fish you sold me, they're not doing very well. He's not cleaned his filter, so the water was poisonous. Doesn't matter how resilient your fish are, a toxic environment is going to kill them. And if that's not, if that doesn't give you a good analogy for the way that we treat mental health in a lot of organisations, I don't know what does.
That's so impactful, and it's there's I want to say a philosophy. There's a thing that I've been talking about a little bit, and I've maybe posted about on Facebook, maybe not so much on LinkedIn, how we are a society that always comes from a lacking place. And actually, my current belief is how that actually is one of the number one root causes for mental health. And you've just explained the two reasons why. The organization, the toxic environment is looking at the person and saying, it's you that lacks the ability to have this resilience, right? It's your kind of your fault. It's the problems with you. You are not good enough, strong enough, resilient enough to be in this environment and take the heat and the pace and the stress, right? So here you go. Let me give you something to go and solve this problem for you, right? Versus it being I'll stand by you, for you, and with you about what you're experiencing and how our organization has actually contributed to you feeling that way, and kind of what we can all work on together about that. There's a story on here. I feel like I'm probably not breaking confidentiality when I talk about it, but it means so much to me. One of my really dear friends was quite high in a position in a very large public organization, let's say, and been diagnosed with post traumatic stress, right? And instead of showing up and just taking whatever was happening, they actually took a stand and put a complaint in, and they went through the correct procedures to bring this to light, because they knew something in them, it wasn't right. And actually through that fight, they managed to have PTSD recognized as a disability. Catastrophic, right? For a case like that to happen. And what that has actually requested the organization do is that everyone that goes into a management position has to be trained on mental health awareness in the workplace, stress, anxiety, etc. And I'm like, that is a perfect example of the battle that someone's experiencing, maybe mental health, stress, anxiety, that has to go through to get the support they need and to make a change in the organisation that has actually contributed to them experiencing this. And it needs to stop, Tim. My personal opinion is it's not a you problem. It's a we. It's an us. It's a together. It's a, I
will also, I think there's something. Even if you wanted to be really, even if you don't give a crap about your people in an organization, right, and you're like a big business, stuff like that, if you've got a significant, and in a lot of organizations, like I think the average is sort of 10 to 15% of people at any one time who are off with some form of poor mental health, and sick days for poor mental health are now the biggest proportion of sick days, But if you've got people off sick, they're the canaries in your coal mine. They're the people who are telling me that there's something unsustainable about your working practice.
Yeah.
If you're breaking people trying to do something, you're doing it wrong. If those people were a machine, you'd be looking at it going, we need to do something with this machine. We need to make sure we're looking after this machine because we can't afford for this machine to break. But for some reason, it's okay for us to do that to people. And so even if you're the most cutthroat, money-grabbing organization, if you're looking at your people and they're breaking, ultimately that's going to be your business. And especially now we're in this situation where I think people are going to be less, they're going to withstand it less. They're going to put up with it less because of what we've all been through the last year. I think a lot of organizations, a lot of employees, I think feel like they've given a lot to their businesses over the last 18 months or so. They've been furloughed, or they've been on lower pay, or they've been working from their bedrooms, and I think there's now an expectation of, right, it's time for us to level up a little bit. So no, I agree. I 100% agree.
Yeah, and it's the kind of the mirror, isn't it, for the company to make a difference. Because we both know, I mean, certainly in my org design and development days, you're nothing without the people, aren't you? So it's kind of, like you say, your sickness levels or environmental kind of non-buying people. So people that aren't bought into kind of what the company is looking to do. It's all a mirror to say, well, maybe we're not clear about how this culture is, or how we communicate, or the vision of this business. And it's kind of like To me, obviously, yeah, the top down, but also if you look to the proportion of people that aren't in work or that aren't bought into the organization to give you the knowledge you need to really live into your vision and grow as a business, you'll add, I think personally, 30-40% on your bottom line if you focus on where it's not working rather than trying to get more out of the people and whatever that is working. Focus on what's not working. And
100%.
Yeah, which I think your organization kind of, your focus is on, what's not working from a people perspective, isn't it? Anyway.
Well, and I mean, a lot of what I do when when I'm working with an organization, a lot of it's based in lean, sort of management, lean theory. And you just described exactly what lean is, which is, let's look at the stuff that, rather than getting the bits that do something and like hammering them to make them go faster, let's look at all the stuff that happens that doesn't add any value. And let's reduce as much of that as we can. And I think there's that certainly, but through looking at the way that, if you've got your small proportion of your organization who are really sustainably engaged and totally on the bus and, cracking on with it, then great. But actually, you've got this huge population of people who've got a very, in some cases, tenuous psychological contract with the organization. And they've probably got your back for the most part until they haven't. And when they haven't, you've lost them. And so I think there's, and actually bringing those people along and engaging those people through giving them agency over their own work and through allowing them to be heard and through, and, there's I think it's 5 dysfunctions of a team, where there's the quote that most reasonable people don't need to get their own way. They just need to be heard. And I think there's this sense of, it's not about organizations just giving their employees what they want, but, ask them, listen to them. They might have some good ideas. If it doesn't work out, explain to them why you're not doing their idea, but, communicate. We're social animals who like to be communicated with, even though a lot of the time we find communication about important things very difficult. And opening up those conversations about difficult things, or even about the way that's how you engage your people, and that's how you bring them along into the organization. So
yeah, it speaks to the saying that I always kind of talk about with the people that I create commitment pledges to. Questions are like open doors, inviting everyone in, and it's kind of like asking those those open questions. And I can't believe, we've been here for nearly half an hour. It's amazing. I knew that we would riff amazingly because we're both passionate about making a difference to people's lives, really, aren't we? Ultimately,
I like the fact we've riffed without setting a theme, though. We've kind of gone, let's just riff.
Yeah. Well, what we're doing, Tim, and you've modelled it perfectly already, it is unapologetically being vulnerable by, being unscripted, unedited. That's the power, I think, of having the right connection and the right people here to create this kind of conversation. We're already open with each other, and therefore I know that's going to invite others in to want to hear what we've got to say, right? Because we're being real, we're being authentic, we're fully aligned with, who we are as people and actually what we're focusing on, and also how we interconnect those two. I think the power of us doing this, what I want for us is a leader that has not quite got the understanding or the ability to speak up and be open, right, and ask the difficult questions, and focus on the areas that may well feel a bit uncomfortable in their organization. That's what I know. You work with the organization, I work with the leaders of the company. Together I know that we will make a difference to well-being, mental health, and experience or be here long enough to experience some of the change and the shifts in those kind of ways of doing things. And that's why we're here, Tim. I think it's so important for us to have this discussion for others to experience and hopefully learn and grow from. Really, that's the main thing.
Well, and I think, I mean, I'll tell you a story, because I was thinking before we started, I was thinking about the whole idea of vulnerability, and I think it's what you said earlier about unapologetic and kind of, I think, unqualified. So I had a couple of moments in my corporate career where I had to sort of embrace that a little bit, due to my own mental health and sort of what was going on around me. Now, the starting point of that was telling my manager that I was struggling. Now, actually, in hindsight, that was really, really easy because she was amazing, and I did really trust her. And actually, that was just and it felt like I was being vulnerable, but I wasn't really, because I really trusted her. It was a difficult thing to hear myself say out loud, and so I think it was more the sort of vocalizing of the thing, as opposed to like the sharing with her that was difficult. And that was important because it kind of got it out there. It made me a little bit more, we were able to sort of work out some ways of helping. But by far and away, the most powerful vulnerability was when actually I didn't tell anyone else. You see, I told my manager, and then I carried on. And we would have conversations. You'd be like, "How are you?" And we talk about it. But I was still sort of walls up everywhere else. And then at some point, it's just like, I'm going to tell my team. And I've had all these reasons. I've got this big list of reasons why not to tell my team. It's kind of like, the organization was going through a bit of a change. And I was kind of, well, if I admit that I'm struggling, they'll think there's a reason to struggle. So they'll think there's something to worry about. So I definitely shouldn't do that. And also, I'm supposed to be the leader of the team. I'm supposed to know what I'm doing about it. Plus, I'm a man, which has its own sort of like complexities and idiocies. And in the end, I was just like, I got the leaders, the managers in my team together, and said, look, this is where I'm at. And I just want you to know, because if I'm off a bit, this is probably why. And the impact that had, actually moving it away from just being this like little secret thing that I had with my manager to being something that was within my team, meant we were immediately a much tighter knit team. So they then shared stuff with me that they wouldn't have shared otherwise, which then led to me just actually having a conversation with my whole team about it. And then, frankly, just like anybody who I spent more than 30 seconds with knew my entire anxiety history. Just because it's kind of, well, look, it just became it was important for the people who I was working closely with to understand that sometimes I'm not going to be bang on A1. But what it also meant was that they felt able to talk about it. Uncovered. People felt able to share where they were finding things difficult, which is what led me down this whole path of actually there's a whole ton of stuff going under the surface that we never talk about in work. And some of it was quite serious, and some of it, if left unchecked, could have gone on and been more difficult. But what it also meant was that there's this support network, and there's this shorthand. And I would have my morning stand up with the team, and I'd be like, look, I'm feeling a bit wobbly today, so the drill. And that drill was, don't just stick something in my calendar with no preamble, or kind of go, can we have a quick chat? Because immediately it's going to be going, oh, what have I done? And there were just 2 or 3 little things that would just, if I'm in that headspace, like, it would just be really helpful if. And also it just meant that from the trust and the shorthand and the relationships became so much stronger. And that kind of meant that in a weird way, I could challenge them more as their leader and as their manager, because kind of like, look, you got everything from me. I've got nothing else hiding. And it meant that from a point of view of their development and from the way that the business conversations we had, it became just more real.
Yeah.
And actually, any kind of sort of weird hidden leadership agenda was gone now, because if I said, look, there is a thing, I can't talk to you about it, they'd know actually there was a thing and I couldn't talk to them about it, as opposed to some kind of, mind games or weird machinations. So I was disappointed that it was in a large organization like I was in at that time. I was one of a few people at a reasonably senior level who actually opened up about their mental health. And it's a personal thing. It's a private thing. Everyone can do what they can choose to do, or not what they want to do. I kind of felt like there was, for a fact though, that I was not the only person who'd had feelings like that, and a couple of other people saying similar things would have been really, really powerful. So I think it was, but yeah. So I think there's definitely something that it was like, it feels hard, but it doesn't have to make things easier in the long run.
I mean, all the way through that, what I wanted to say is really a heartfelt thank you. A thank you for leading the way. A thank you for being courageous and owning what was going on with you, because as you said, the first part is actually admitting it to other people. It's okay thinking about this thing going on with you until you speak it to somebody. It kind of doesn't feel real, and then all of a sudden,
I think that's also admitting it to yourself a little bit.
Of course, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And you will see once it happens, one, you're not alone. There's others that experience it. Two, it will be like a Skittles. If like kind of, you'll see other people then kind of come in and talking about these things, like you have given them permission to say that this is okay, and no, I'm not going to die or whatever is going to happen to me if I admit these things, right? And also you're just saying there's nothing wrong with you. This is a human feeling that I think is important for people to know about me. And you're right, the team just pulled together so much easier because of that openness. So I'd love to dive into being a male and kind of talking this loads. Like we definitely need to do this again, and another one definitely, Tim. But for now, I wanted us to close out on one of my questions that I always ask everyone. What has vulnerability given you, Tim?
So, I would answer this question very differently like a year and a bit ago if I was still in corporate employment, and because it would have been all around that stuff around leadership. I think where I'm actually at now is that going through that sense of owning, of being vulnerable and owning my stuff, and not feeling the need to kind of have the walls up and so on. What it's actually done is it's made me a lot more comfortable in the idea that I'm enough, and that actually not just enough, but sort of, there's a lot of people who do like technically do what I do. There's a lot of lean consultants out there. There are other productivity people out there, and some of them have been doing it longer, and some of them are better, and some of them have more certificates and all of this. But I'm the only one who's me. And that's not just okay. That's like a selling point.
Yeah. Totally.
And so being able to kind of go, look, this is what this is what I do. This is my thing. This is the way I go about things. This is what I believe in. This is what drives me. All that is part and parcel of the whole conversation. And actually the tools I use and the way that the workshops I do are structured, and it's kind of beside the point.
What I think you're saying though, overall, vulnerability has given you a purpose. Like it's helped you see and live into your purpose, like the real thing that you're focusing on.
I think it's helped me go all in on it, definitely.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, I think before I did that, I think at one point I could have been very much, it's about well-being some of the time if people want to talk about well-being, or it could be about business improvement if people want to talk about business improvement. And I think actually just being really, really honest with myself and going, actually, what's important to me, and that's what's important to me. So yeah.
Amazing. Really loved having you with us, Tim. As
It's
we
been fun.
said, we could carry on. But for those who are watching, and thank you for coming to join this conversation. If you found it really valuable and you think someone you know would really love to hear what we've talked about, please share the link, the YouTube link. It goes live on there now. If you'd like to carry on a conversation with Tim, you can find him on LinkedIn or pop on and have a look at his website to read more about what projects he's on and working on. And if you'd like to know any more about me, then definitely pop me a message and find me on LinkedIn, Heather Eggington. I'd love to carry on a conversation with you about any of the topics we've discussed today. Thank you so much, Tim. It's been amazing.
That's all. I've had fun, and I didn't fall off my chair or anything.
Or sneeze.
Or sneeze. Yeah.
Oh, see you all soon. Thank you for
Thank you, everybody.